Cool. All right. Going live in the book. But yeah, even in a month or two, we'll have to, come on again once things are, because I'm super curious just about, what's going to happen over the next month or two, like rent coming in May 1st now, just different stuff like that happening. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen, what's going to transpire. So we'll have to, keep things updated, if you will.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, let's roll here. All right, guys, we have Ron Sneller here, Knights of Columbus, insurance agent, but more importantly, family man, God-fearing man, and someone that is closely aligned with just the things that I've been speaking on and doing for years now. And you and I think we've been, for years. I don't even know when we met initially, but it was years ago, and just coming and kind of going back and forth for years now. And I'm just excited because I really don't know a ton about insurance stuff. And you're the expert in that area. So excited to talk to you more about that. And, you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, kind of what you do, and just grateful to have you on, man.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on. I've been in financial services since 2011. I actually started out in the mortgage industry. I worked for Quicken for a couple of years there. And my story is, when I was working with Quicken, we were just kind of coming out of that financial crash, and everybody was trying to refinance their homes and take advantage of lower interest rates. And at the time, that was a problem because everybody was underwater. But then the government came out with these HARP loans that were a godsend to millions of people. Right. But the one thing that I kind of identified in the 2 years that I worked there were the number of people in their 60s and in their 70s who were just absolutely desperate because of the financial crash. People who maybe had 6 years left to have a mortgage paid off, and they had to refinance back to a 30-year just because they needed the extra cash flow. Like, people desperate because for decades they could rely on their equity in their home to bail them out, or even using it like as an ATM card. Well, that was gone. Right.
Yeah.
And then, people desperate to refinance. Well, even the people who did have equity, well, guess what? You're out of a job, so you can't, but it was really like the people in their 60s and 70s when that happened. Well, you know what? We were about to retire, but now we have to delay at least 5 years and maybe more. We don't know. Or the amount of people who had been retired for a few years, now they had to try to go back to work. And as much as I was able to help people out with the mortgage industry, my thought was, if they had somebody helping them with their financial lives, we could have prevented them from ever getting to this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why I kind of made the switch with my career, and why I wanted to get into financial planning and utilizing insurance contracts and things of that nature. So.
Yeah, no, that's huge. Yeah. I forgot that you're at Quicken, actually. Yeah. So that is a great place to just building leadership and everything. So
yeah,
it's huge. Cool,
and
man.
I met my lovely wife there. So, so we've been married we're coming up on 4 years. We have 2 beautiful daughters.
Yeah, congrats.
So I was able to do a lot of great things for people and get a lot of knowledge with mortgage industry, but probably most important, met the love of my life. So, and the mother of my children. So it was a good stop in my career. Yeah.
Oh man, love it. That's huge. Cool. Well, yeah, let's roll into, we're going to talk about some of the deadly sins here of just retirement, financial planning, et cetera. So let's dive into some of that and talk about that. And just, life insurance, that's not sexy, but life insurance, why it's so important, but also we're going to get into, just some wealth maximization accounts and different things. I like to say, my big thing lately is I've been telling my wife, telling Jessica, like, I don't want a financial planner, right? I don't want one of those in my life. There's a lot of good ones out there, obviously, just like any industry, but I want a family office, I want a family bank. I don't want to have my future, my life in someone else's hands necessarily. Now you have a lot of advisors, a lot of people, just like you and I are talking, right? You're advising me on insurance stuff. You're advising a lot of people on insurance stuff, but it's not like, hey, Mr. So-and-so, just take care of my stuff. And I don't know what's happening. And hopefully you get a return on my money, my currency, I should say. So yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna get off my soapbox, but so the life, life insurance, kind of like the ins and outs of that a little bit, but also just, again, whole term life, whole term, whole life term, and some different stuff like that. Kind of break some of that down. Cause again, I know a bit about it, but I don't know all that I should, admittedly. So.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, let's start going back to having a planner or an advisor in somebody's life, right? And it could be a really good thing for a lot of people, but for guys like you and me, like, we're interested in having control and direction over our own financial life. And at the end of the day, when somebody has a financial advisor, they're pretty much saying, look, I don't have the time or the interest in this. I'm going to give you my money. I need you to do it. And that's cool. With the financial planning industry, and you and I have talked about this, there's a lot of, they're just set in their ways in a lot of things. And it's not always necessarily the optimal way for most people.
Right.
I had a webinar yesterday where I had a young gentleman, 25 years old, who was telling me like what he was doing with his 401k. He's, I'm contributing 11% and the company matches 4%. So I'm saving 15%. And so for a young guy who's 25 years old, that's fantastic, right? But he was looking for some guidance. It was actually one of the young men who was on the webinar with you a couple of weeks ago. So I started asking him questions. I said, okay, and that's, I guess, if you want to talk about like the 7 deadly sins, number 1, like, people don't have a holistic plan. They just start saving money or investing money, but they don't actually have a plan. They just know that they're supposed to. But having a 401k that's not a strategy. That's just, you have some money. And you're tying it up in a government plan, and there's a lot of restrictions on what you can and can't do with that money. So as I'm going through, I'm just asking them some questions. I said, so why do you have a 401k? And most people don't even know, but when you think about it, it's for retirement income. Like, when I'm 60 years old, 65 years old, and I want to retire, like, this account has to be able to distribute cash flow to me.
Yes.
Right. So I started asking this young man, okay, so when you do retire, like, you're not working anymore. So imagine you are your dad's age. You have this bulk of money, like, and you're taking retirement income. What percentage of that income do you want not tied to stock market risk, business risk, or real estate risk? He said, well, I don't want any of it tied to that. Like, when I'm retired, I want to be able to rely on this money. And I said, well, you're putting 100% of your money, into the stock and bond market, where those are all volatile and extreme risk. Right. You and I know that. I think your story was it your senior year? You're getting ready to graduate from college when the financial crash hit. Right. So you and I we came up, like, we grew up with that, like, watching our parents struggle, watching our parents, like, within a year's time, having their retirement resources cut in half.
Exactly.
Right. And the next question that I asked this young man, I said, okay, so when you retire, you don't want to have any risk tied to your retirement income. And what percentage of your retirement income do you not want subject to income tax? He said, I don't want to have to pay any income tax on it. He said, I'm working right now, I'm paying income tax. I don't want to keep doing that when I'm retired. And I said, well, you're putting all your money into a qualified account. 100% of it is going to be taxed as it comes out. Mm-hmm. And he didn't necessarily understand that. And he was a little bit concerned. And then my next question was, well, we talk about with all the fiscal irresponsibility in our country. The country's about to be $25 trillion in debt. All of our programs are underfunded, like Social Security. All of our seniors count on that, right? But it's projected to be insolvent in the year 2034.
Yeah.
Medicare, the largest health program in the world, right? All of our seniors rely on that. It's projected to be insolvent in 2026. Now, where's the government going to get the money to pay for that? I mean, they're going to print a lot of it, obviously. But at the same time, like, you don't think that tax rates are going to go up in the future? And the other thing that has to be a part of the conversation, like, whether you love our president or whether you hate him, I don't find many people who have, like, a middle ground. He's very polarizing. It seems like most people either love him or hate him. But just, politics aside, if you want to call it the Trump tax plan, like, our current tax law expires in 2025, but tax rates are very low right now if you look at the historical context of everything. And it's like, we're all probably in the lowest tax bracket that we're ever going to be in for the rest of our lives. I mean, think about it. Like, not only are we trillions of dollars in current debt, we have 140 trillion of current unfunded liabilities. And it seems like every politician that comes out, they're getting more and more of an appetite for all these social programs: free healthcare, free college, basic universal income. Like, where's that money going to come from? Like, why wouldn't you pay the taxes right now when you know exactly what they are? Why wouldn't you pay the taxes right now when you know that they're low, and transfer that money to the future completely income tax free? Now, Brandon, you're a real estate guy, right? So you're working with like loans and capital and kind of using the leverage of other people's money. So let me ask you something. If you came to me and you wanted like a loan for real estate, and I said, well, let me tell you what, Brandon, I'm having the best year ever. I don't really need this money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to loan you whatever you want. But there's one caveat to it. I don't know what the repayment terms are going to be, and I don't know what the interest rate's going to be. We'll figure that out in the future when I decide I want my money back. Would that be a good loan? Like, would you take that from me and trust me on that?
That would be a tough sell. That would be.
But isn't that exactly what people are doing with their 401ks and IRAs? They're putting this money away. 30 years from now, we're already in a fiscal mess. We have no idea what it's going to be like, compounded over 30 years and what those tax rates are going to be. Right. And if we happen to go back to tax rates, even what they were like in the early to mid 80s, like I was born in 1980. You're probably a few years younger than me.
Yep.
But back then, right now, the highest tax bracket federal is 36%.
Yep.
Back then, it was 70%. People were regularly paying 50%, 60%, 70% income tax. And we have all these different tax breaks that are available to us right now. But look, these politicians, they're trying to close all these tax loopholes.
Yes.
As far as like the different standard deductions and the things that we rely on during our working years, like mortgage interest deductions, childcare credit. If you have children in college, like generally speaking, we lose all that when we retire. Like most of that's gone. So it could be very well that we end up paying a lot more taxes in retirement. So again, as I'm asking questions of this young man and he's identifying like what his strategy is, like what his goals are, he's doing the complete opposite of everything he believes, because that's what the financial planning, like the Wall Street industry, has kind of conditioned us to do. And I think that you've seen that too.
Absolutely.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with many different points there. And what you just said, that is a quote that I think I had sent you. Actually, it's from one of the books here. But it was, insurance and Wall Street are competing for your money, and Wall Street keeps winning, and you don't even know why. Why are they winning? And why are you just continually giving them your money when you don't know? Like you just said a couple minutes ago, you don't even know what that tax rate's going to be. What's going to happen in the future. I have no idea. I hope it's there. I'm hoping and praying that it's there. And I think it's just so poignant that you say that, because in this time, obviously, what we're going through now, obviously, is something no one's ever, haven't seen maybe in 100 years, I guess, since the Spanish flu, but you haven't seen it. And then compounded with what you also just said, which is the entitlements and the off-balance sheet, programs that we have that are coming to fruition over the next decade or two. It's scary. It's scary. So, getting control of that somehow, obviously you can't control everything in life, but getting control of that somehow is hugely beneficial. And that's where, again, that's something I'm been getting into now, learning. Like I said, I love the content you put out and your wealth of knowledge when it comes to that, because there are different ways to protect yourself, and they're just things that haven't been taught in school, or by your parents or whoever it may be. So finding advisors is important. It's huge. That's why we have Ron here.
Well, you got to find the right one where their values and beliefs match up with what yours are.
Absolutely.
And that's, this conversation, let's kind of roll into point number 2, because point number 2 is when people are, saving and investing for retirement, they don't know what to do when they get there. So point number 2 is they have no spend down plan. So they accumulate this money, but they have no idea how they're going to spend it. And we've seen in the last 2 recessions, like when the tech bubble popped in 2000 and then the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, this general, or conventional wisdom, if you want to call it that rule of thumb, like when you retire, you should have a 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds, and you can withdraw 4% per year. Like that's back to William Bengen in the 1990s in the Trinity study, but that's been conventional rule of thumb for 20 years, that if I can have that allocation, and if I use that safe maximum withdrawal strategy of 4%, I should be okay. Well, that's completely smashed now. Like that's been debunked because of the last 20 years, all the volatility, all the low interest rates, and in the last crash, both stocks and bonds went down. So if somebody was withdrawing 4% from their portfolio, chances are they're going to end up running out of money. Right. There was a study that I was just reading yesterday by Morningstar that somebody who had their retirement account, if they were to retire at the wrong time, say they retired in 2008, and if they took just a 25% loss in the first year, there was a 59% chance that they would run out of money before they died.
Wow.
So those chances aren't good. So let's go back to the spend down plan then. So this gentleman said, the young man I was talking to yesterday said, well, I don't want to have any of my retirement income tied to this risk, this stock or bond market. And we looked at what he was doing in his 401k, and we said, look, based on the amount of money you're saving here, let's just say you got a 7% rate of return, which is actually, that would be better than what we've actually seen over the last 20 years because of all the volatility. Now, let's say we're going to subtract 1% for the advisor's fee. So we're going to say you get a 6% rate of return net. He could have accumulated over $1.5 million in his 401k, all pre-tax. But the current safe withdrawal rate is about 3%. So to withdraw 3% from that, he would have been able to take out about $57,000 a year. But guess what? Income taxes are due. So after he would have paid all the income tax, he would have had about $45,000 of spendable income, right?
Yeah.
But I showed him on how using a life insurance contract to do the exact same thing, he could actually save less money every year, put it into an insurance contract, and have more after-tax spendable money. Yep. Because people just don't know how it works. Because when you put money into an insurance contract like that, as you take the distributions in retirement, they're completely tax exempt. So quite frankly, there's nowhere for those distributions to even be filed on an income tax return. And not only do you not pay any income tax on it, it doesn't affect your Social Security benefits. It doesn't affect any of your Medicare premium offset. Like, you could literally not file an income tax return. And if you set it up that way, not only would you not file an income tax return, you could actually qualify for welfare.
Wow.
Literally, you could qualify for food stamps, an Obama phone, the free Obamacare, all the government cheese.
Yeah.
Because you're not actually claiming any income. So the rules of wealth are not just about chasing rates of return. It's about understanding the entire picture as it comes to distribution rates, as it comes to taxes, and how it's going to affect other things like Social Security and Medicare.
Yep. What would you say to somebody who, and again, I love talking about the three sides of the coin, right? I think we were going back and forth the other day about this, right? And it's like pessimism and optimism, and in the middle is reality. And being on the edge of the coin is a realist sees both sides and can make a decision. And so like we talk about Robert Kiyosaki's of the world, or there's other people out there, obviously the Jim Rickers of the world, and Jim Rogers, and all these different guys out there. And then you've got the Dave Ramseys, and or the Susie Ormans or something like that. I watch all those different things because I want to make my own decision, right? It's not just follow one person blindly. It's maybe there is something good over here that you can take, and something good over here you can take and marry the two, or whatever it may be. What is your thought? The things I've watched, and I haven't watched thousands and thousands of hours of Dave Ramsey, but I've watched a fair amount, and he's usually bashing life insurance, or whatever. He's usually bashing, this and that, and debt too, right? And those guys love debt on the other side, and he bashes debt. And I think he takes an approach of, hey, you're not that you're not smart enough to do it, but you don't have the time. And you mentioned earlier, like some people, it's the right fit because they don't have the time. They have other things going on in their life, and they just want someone else to help them manage it or financially plan with them and do it. And that's Dave Ramsey's approach. It's more of like, hey, just throw in the stock market and do this and do that. And he kind of tells you what to do instead of teaching you how you can, fish for yourself. And what would you say to someone who is, here's Dave Ramsey and he's bashing life insurance and kind of what you had just talked about? That's why I'm thinking of it, because you just kind of brought up, the not having an income tax and things like that. And he always, that's ridiculous. Like, put it in the stock market, put it in a mutual fund, blah, blah, blah. So what would be your response, or if someone does ask you that or brings that kind of stuff up, what do you say to them?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad that you brought that up. First of all, with Dave Ramsey, Dave has done so many great things for the American people. I mean, he's taught them how to look at money correctly, like as a tool and as stewardship. And he helps people to like budget and get out of bad debt. And I think that's a real key. I mean, there's good debt and there's bad debt.
Yep.
Right. And guys like you and I know that, but Dave Ramsey will never admit that. He says that all debt is bad. So he's done some really good things when it comes to insurance and investments. I'll just put it like this. There's no good financial product out there. There's no bad financial product out there.
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
They're all tools that are designed to accomplish different financial goals.
Yep.
So if you're ever talking to an advisor who is very dogmatic in his beliefs, like this is always bad or always do this, this is always good. You know what my advice is? Run.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he probably has his own best interest in mind and not yours. Because like guys like Dave Ramsey who don't like life insurance, or guys like, you know, Ken Fisher, he takes out full page ads in the newspaper. I hate annuities. Well, why does that? Because insurance and annuities are competition for what they do, which is sell investments.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
And investments can be good. Annuities can be good. Insurance can be good. And in my retirement planning process, I implement all of those things. Very comprehensive because you use them all for different reasons. But that's where it comes back to like having a comprehensive plan and knowing why you're making the decisions that you're making.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate you touching on that, because it's like you said, there's no bad investment. There's just bad investors, right? Like you just said, like it's the mindset. It's what's going on between the ears. Everything is out there and they're all tools. And it's just how you use them or how do you do or don't utilize them is what really changes or what makes it bad or good, I guess. It's the person, not the thing. So cool. What next point? Do you have point number 3? Or do you want to we can touch on
Well, point number 3 would be this. You know, people are too focused on growth. And that's where like you're gonna see your guys like Dave Ramsey. They kind of appeal to people's greed and they try to get them to invest all this money and try to get them to grow their assets, and they try to get them to like be happy with seeing some big number on a piece of paper where they can go out there and they can beat their chest like this and I'm worth this much, this is my net worth, and puff their chest out. But at the end of the day, like, why do we accumulate those assets? We accumulate those assets so we can convert them into income in retirement. And because you can't spend paper assets, right? You can't spend net worth. Retirees spend paycheck. And if you think about this, who are the most miserable people that you know in retirement? The people who retired on assets. They're loaded. They got assets coming out the wazoo, but they're always miserable because they're worried about losing money in the stock market. They're losing money in oil. They're losing money in China. They're worried about, well, what's going to happen if this bozo gets into the Oval Office versus this bozo over here? Like, what's that going to mean for my money? Right? So the people who retire only on assets, they're miserable. But think about the people who are happiest in retirement. It's people with pensions. People who have guaranteed paychecks. They're coming in consistently, reliably, every single month. So your retired teachers, retired military, retired government employees. So these people, they have their paychecks coming in and they're not worried about what happens in the stock market. They're not worried what happens in China, or they don't worry about the price of oil. And quite frankly, like, they don't really care who's in the Oval Office. I mean, from a financial standpoint, they don't care who's in the Oval Office, right? Because they have
until the government defaults.
Correct. So they have the consistent money coming in. So that kind of leads me to point number 4 then, is that the big mistake I see is that people don't have a volatility buffer or a volatility shield. So they don't have non-correlated asset classes. So for a young guy who's 25, 35, and what I do, like for my volatility buffer, I love permanent life insurance because of the tax advantages, the way that you can basically turn it into your own pension in retirement, because that's the way that these contracts work. Like you can set it up where you receive an income for the rest of your life and never pay a dime of income tax on it, right? So it provides that certainty and predictability. And a cool thing is, like, I have a family, like, so if something happens to me, like, I have life insurance to help provide for them as well. And then for maybe people who are older, like maybe they never had a financial advisor and all they did was accumulate money in a 401k and then they retired, they got to figure out what they're going to do with it. Like, so we need to protect some of that money against the downswings, but we need to be able to most efficiently convert that asset into income. And the best way to do that part is with an annuity. So that's what I usually do. Again, depending on people's risk tolerance and what their goals are, have an annuity to provide their income. Like if they don't have their own pension, keep some of their money safe, whether it be like maybe in bonds or a fixed index account. And then maybe we keep 50 or 60% invested in the stock market because we need to have some money positioned for growth to offset the effects of inflation. But so many people I see, they get to retirement, they've got all their money in the stock market because that's what they told they were supposed to do. And that's the number one concern. Because It's good for my business, right? But
Mhm.
that's my number one concern for these people. And how quickly do we forget these lessons, Brandon? It's been about a decade now, but like going back
So
to when I
fast.
was working in the mortgage industry, like
Yeah.
people trying to refinance their house at 65 years old. They had to go back at work at 65 years old. Why? Because
Yes.
they got greedy. They had all their money in the market and then they lost half of it. And well, there goes my retirement plan, right? And as the old saying goes, pigs get fat, but hogs get slaughtered.
Yeah, absolutely.
There has to be a time where you are satisfied or content with your goals. And now it's like, look, let's take some of our profits off the table and lock those profits in.
Absolutely.
Right. And
Yeah.
I know I'm kind of ranting right now, but
No,
I see the people out there who they're not doing the right things. They're not being led down the right direction and they're getting hurt. Like I have a friend,
absolutely.
he's a fellow Knights of Columbus member here in Waterford.
Hmm.
With all this stuff that's happened with the coronavirus and like we saw like a 30% dip in the market. Now it's kind of come back. I think we're just down like 10 or 15% as we
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
recover. But
Yep.
he was supposed to retire in July and he doesn't have an investment advisor. He just has his 401k, but he watched that 401k get cut by 30%.
Yeah.
Guess what? He can't retire anymore.
Yeah.
Right. But that's where
That's
I
real
get
stuff.
angry. Like I
Yeah.
took all the money I had in the stock market. I took it all out in December. And I'm not trying to say I'm like some kind of genius, because as I'm looking at things here, it's like we just had the longest bull run in American stock market history,
Yep.
11 years.
Yep.
We're going into a very contentious election year where you know that everything that happens is going to get blown out of proportion by the media. It's going to scare people. It's going to spook investors. Like the media is just doing it to try to influence the election, but
Right.
it's going to scare people and it's going to
Right.
spook investors and it's going to cause some swings in the stock market. And it's like, if I'm an investment advisor and I got a client who's 62 and he wants to retire in 2 years and I've got him in 90% stocks, well, shame on me.
Right.
Shame on me. Like the writing was on the wall. Like, why would you have your 62-year-old client positioned in like 90% stocks
Right.
when you have all these other forces at work? Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah, absolutely. Going back really quick for a second, if you could, you touch on annuities a little bit and stuff like that. And why don't you explain that a little bit for people who don't know? Because I mean, the older crowd probably understands it more, but a lot of the younger crowd, I'm sure, really probably has no idea what that is or what that means.
Sure. Yeah. So all an annuity is, the easiest way to describe it is an annuity is a pension in waiting. Remember earlier we talked about people who had the traditional defined benefit plan, like maybe somebody who worked at GM. Like my parents worked at GM when they still had pensions. So they've got pensions, right? So they have a guaranteed paycheck coming in every month. Less than 20% of workers today are covered by a traditional pension. But the people who are happiest in retirement have guaranteed income. So if you don't have a traditional pension, an annuity is a strategy to create your own. So if somebody, they saved up $1 million in their 401k during their working years, they might take 20% of that or 30% of that and purchase an annuity, which would then provide them with an income stream for the rest of your life. And so at the end of the day, when you purchase an annuity, you end up over time receiving much more in income than you ever bought the annuity for. But it allows you to have that consistent, secure income, because so many people, Brandon, the thing that I see in retirement, I mean, people can have $1 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't spend their money. They don't spend their money. They don't spend their money. Well, why not? Why haven't you taken the trip? Why haven't you bought the boat? Why haven't you seen the world? That's what you said you were going to do.
Right.
What if we have another stock market crash? What if we live to be in our 90s? What if we have to go into a nursing home?
Yep.
What if? So they don't spend their money. And then what happens? They die.
Mm-hmm.
And then the money goes to the kids, and the kids end up spending the money. The kids buy the boat. The kids get the cruise. The kids travel the world, right? And this is what I tell people, like, listen, you save this money for you. This is your golden years, and I want you to maximize and take advantage of it. So putting a portion of your money into an annuity and giving yourself that guaranteed paycheck the rest of your life, it basically gives you permission to spend your money and not worry about the what if.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because when I get my annuity check this month, I might as well go out and spend it. You know why? Because next month it's going to come in again. And the month after that, and the month after that. And if the stock market crashes 50%, my annuity payment's unaffected. Like, it's going to keep coming in, right? No big deal. Let's go golf the back nine.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is where you have your volatility buffer, and you can put some certainty into your retirement income so you can actually live the lifestyle that you want and not be worried about things all the time. So that's what an annuity is. It's basically like you funding your own pension.
Interesting. Yes. I mean, I knew of most of that. So the next layer here of that is what I don't know is kind of like I guess, taxes off that, but like also where is that annuity, like how is that invested, or like what is that vehicle that's actually throwing off income every month? Obviously the annuity is doing that, but what is that in, or how is that providing you that income every month?
Great question. So you can only buy an annuity from a life insurance company because it's a mortality-based product. So we talked earlier about like the safe withdrawal rate from a managed money portfolio is about 3% because of all the really violent volatility that we've seen in the last 20 years and persistently low interest rates. Right now, if a 65-year-old guy went to thousands of life insurance companies in America and wanted to buy an annuity, it would give him a 6% plus distribution rate. Now, that's not an interest rate. That's the amount of income he's receiving as a percentage of his overall asset. But it's about twice as much as what you can take from a managed money portfolio. You don't have to worry about any volatilities. Now, life insurance companies, they are the strongest financial companies in the world, right?
Warren Buffett does it, right?
Exactly. And a lot of people don't know that. We could talk about that a little bit later as well.
Absolutely.
But you think about all the banks that failed, like all the scandals and manipulations going on with Wall Street, the life insurance companies weren't affected by any of that because their investment strategies and decisions, they have to be like really safe and solid. Because look, if somebody becomes disabled, like we have to have money to pay their disability claim. If somebody dies, like we have to have that capital to pay their life insurance claim. We can't go to a family or a widow with kids and say, oh, we actually don't have the money because the stock market is down 30% right now. Correct. So they have to invest like really solidly, but throughout time, all the way back to the Great Depression, it was life insurance companies. Yeah, right. Ever heard of fractional reserve banking?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, a whole nother.
But with the life insurance company, like all insurance is it's risk pooling, right? So an annuity contract is able to pay out such higher distribution rates because of all the risk pooling, the money that goes in here, and really, it's kind of like the people who live longer are subsidized by the capital of the people who die early. So it's a mortality-based product. So to get back to your question, it's that money's with an insurance company. It's generally invested a portfolio of usually like AAA rated corporate bonds, a little bit of real estate. So the investments are really solid, which allows the insurance company to give these, consistent payouts and keep them there even during the toughest financial times, like with the stock market and things like that. Maybe.
Yeah. And then, so the other part is kind of like taxes. Like, if you're getting that cash, thrown off to you every single month, is there a tax associated with that? Like, how does that work?
That's also a really good question. So it depends on what kind of account you're buying the annuity with. So if you have a completely like pre-tax traditional IRA, like none of that money's been taxed yet, and you use that money to buy an annuity, all the income that you receive from the annuity is going to be taxable. So it was never taxed yet.
Okay.
And Uncle Sam always has to get his money, baby. You know that.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Now, if you have money that's non-qualified, let's say it's money sitting in the bank, right? Like you're not really sure what to do. You want to keep this portion of your asset safe. So I just got it in a CD.
Yep.
And man, what are CDs paying right now? 1% maybe or less. Well, say someone says, you know what, I'm going to take this money, and instead of doing that, I'm going to buy this annuity because this is going to spoon off much more cash flow to me. So what will happen, every annuity payment that somebody receives is going to be partly a return of their principal, which is non-taxable, and then partly going to be some interest in what we call mortality credits, basically like longevity credits. The longer you live, the more income that you receive. So that part is like considered gain. So that part would be taxable.
Okay.
So there's this really complicated formula that's created by actuaries, like people way smarter than me. But if somebody buys an annuity, we can just quickly run an illustration with our software and say, look, your payment's $1,000 a month, like this much is return of principal, and then this much is the portion that's taxable.
Okay.
Obviously, there's a lot that goes into it to make sure it's the right purchase or the right tool for the person. But at the end of the day, I said it's like an annuity is a pension in waiting, or you could also think of it as cash flow insurance.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating.
It's never affected by any kind of down markets, and it lasts as long as you live.
Interesting. Cool. Thanks for explaining that. The other thing that we touched on a little bit earlier too, and again, selfishly, I want to have you kind of break them down a little bit and talk about them. It's just whole life, term, I think you mentioned earlier, like permanent insurance policy or something to that effect. Just kind of breaking down the differences between those, because again, it's, as you know, I mean, we talk about this all the time. I study this stuff in the insurance world. I haven't done as much as I have in other areas, but to me still it's I know half of it, but half of it's still confusing. So if you could break down kind of whole life, term, and kind of some of those.
That perfectly rolls into my next deadly sin on financial planning is that people making mistakes with their insurance. I mean, people are woefully insured, whether that be like, let's face it. I mean, it's a law in Michigan that you have to have auto insurance, but if it wasn't, most people would probably try to go without it. They try to buy like the cheapest insurance possible, even if maybe that's not the right thing to do. But we want to make sure, especially people who are financially minded, like you and I, like we're building something, right? And if it's worth building, isn't it worth protecting? Like with the right amount of homeowner insurance or auto insurance or life or disability insurance. Coming from the mortgage world and you're in real estate. I mean, since the financial crash, I don't know if you realize this or not, but the number one cause of foreclosures in America are long-term disability claims because people don't have disability insurance. They think, it's never going to happen to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'm a young, strong buck. I'm 40 years old. Like this is never going to happen to me. But guess what? It does. Right.
And the people who don't have later in life. Medical's usually what bankrupts people older in life too, right? So I mean, it's full circle. Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, just disability insurance is something huge that people should have. Then when it comes down to like term life insurance and whole life insurance, like this is kind of like my philosophy. So people should have in term life insurance. They should be able to replace their income for the amount of time that they have left to work. So if a 45-year-old guy plans on retiring at 65, that's 20 years left. That's his human capital, right?
Yeah.
Like he's an ATM machine for his family.
Yep.
Like he's an ATM and he goes to work and he's like spooning off cash flow and his paycheck, right? And so he should have that full amount insured. So, if he makes $100,000 a year and if he's going to work for 20 years, he should have $2 million of term life insurance, right? Yep. I mean, think about that. I mean, if somebody like with their homeowner's insurance, I mean, you don't sit there and say, well, okay, so my home's worth $400,000. I'm only going to insure it for $200,000 because I have, $100,000 in a 401k and I got $100,000 in savings. No, the point of insurance is to protect your other assets, right?
Yep.
So if you're going to insure your home or your car for what's called full replacement value, why wouldn't you do that with your life and like your income earning potential?
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Now, and then, so what term life insurance is, it's temporary insurance. That's what term is, temporary. So it's good for a specific term. So with our 45-year-old example, if he plans on working at age 65, he could buy what's called a 20-year term policy, but it's temporary. It covers him from age 45 to age 65, and then the term expires.
Okay.
Right. So if he dies at age 66, that's not good. But it's a risk that we take. And so when you look at the pricing difference between term policies and whole life insurance, so that's with whole life, it never expires. It's permanent. And so if you're looking at it strictly as a cost, it costs a lot more money because 100% of those policies pay a benefit.
Right.
With term life insurance, only about 2% of term policies ever actually pay out a benefit. They're temporary, and most people live past the term. And that's why, like from the actuarial pricing, like that's why they're so cheap. Now, that doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing, but you look at term life insurance like you look at your homeowner's insurance, like you look at your auto insurance. I have this to protect myself and my family, but I hope I never have to use it. Like I hope that this is just money we're flushing down the toilet.
Yeah.
We need to have it just in case.
Yep.
Now with permanent life insurance, there's a lot of, did I explain your question with the term enough? I'm just trying to spend too much time on it. And
no, that was perfect. So it leads me to another question is, and again, I know this isn't like a simple one sentence answer, but what's right for what person, right? Like, because people, it's always the kind of a battle. A lot of times people, like we mentioned Dave Ramsey earlier or whoever, people always, term or get this or get whole life. I mean, what's I don't know. Like I said, it's not an easy answer, but what's something where it's like, okay, this person should probably be looking towards term, or they should be looking towards whole, or are people stacking them on top of each other policies, or like kind of, what does that kind of look like, I guess?
Yeah. So 95% of the people that I work with have a combination of both.
Okay.
I have a combination of both. I have one large term policy, like 2.6 million, something like that.
Yep.
I have inflation protection built into it, so it goes up every couple of years.
Okay.
And then I have like 5 whole life policies. I started my first one at age 29 and added on a few years, as my business has grown and as my income has went up. So you can have multiple policies, and you can have them layered and you can have them laddered. I have some clients who like laddered their term policies as well. Maybe like a 35-year-old guy bought a 20-year policy that would cover him to age 55.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he gets to be 45, now he's buying another policy covering him from 45 to 65. But they're layered because for that 10-year period between 45 and 55, he has two policies covered.
Yeah.
In a way, that's actually smart, because really between 45 to 55, for most people, that's their peak earning years. That's like when their kids are like at the age where the kids have the most activities, and they cost the most money, and they're getting ready for college. And if something happened to you, you'd want to have more capital available to protect them. So
you get more overlapping in those years. Yeah,
absolutely. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. And that a lot of times just comes down to like budget and affordability for people. But it's like, look, I mean, you can get a $2 million term policy. And if you really want to come, like, maybe you have to sacrifice your $5 Starbucks coffee every day. Right. But is that worth it to protect your family?
Right.
Those are the decisions that we come down to. And like,
you're asking a lot for
I know.
You're asking a lot for Americans, Ron.
I know it. But, look, I mean, for people who aren't going to make that sacrifice, like if that's just not the way their mind is geared, like that's, I mean, that's okay. Right.
Yep.
But the people who buy term life insurance, they're not buying that for themselves. They're buying it because they love other people, whether, they're married or kids or both. And it's for them.
Yep.
Okay. Let's kind of transition then into permanent life insurance.
Yep.
I mean, obviously there's a permanent death benefit. So, the fastest growing segment of people buying permanent life insurance policies are retirees, like age 65 years of age and older. And generally they're buying smaller policies, like $10,000 or $20,000, enough to just take care of their final expenses.
Okay.
And, I mean, why are they doing that? Because they haven't been able to save and keep enough money. So they're just like, I don't want to have my, my son or daughter have to pay, $15,000 for my funeral. Let me, buy a policy where I can pay a little bit every month, and then it's going to give them a death benefit. Now, I don't really work in that market very much. Like there's a whole like segment of the insurance industry, like where they focus on final expense, and like they're trying to like get the best deal they can for these people who are looking for it. But just from like a strictly like death benefit standpoint, like that's some of what happens. A lot of people like to buy larger policies because of their just legacy goals. Like, look, when I pass away, if I want to leave my kids $200,000, what's the most efficient way to do it? Well, it's not in a 401k, because if I give my kid $200,000 right now, that's going to put them in the top tax bracket. So 80,000 of that's actually going to go to the Internal Revenue Service, and my kid's only going to get 120,000.
Yeah.
But if I buy a permanent life insurance policy, I'm just paying like a little bit every month. And whenever it is that I do die, like they're going to get the 200,000 completely income tax free.
Wow.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. So yeah, no, thanks for breaking those three down, the whole life, term, and the permanent. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Cool. I think where are we on 0.5 or 6?
Yeah, let's see. I think I'm kind of getting lost here a little bit.
Well, we talked about, I think 0.5 was that was kind of breaking down the different the different types of insurances and then,
absolutely. So point number 6 then is the mistake that I see a lot of people make, is that they're not risk smart. And so some of this stuff we've already covered, but they're not aware of how, like, older people aren't aware of how annuities can help them. Younger people aren't aware of the fact that like I showed the young gentleman yesterday, he could fund a cash value life insurance policy. We just looked at an amount of $8,700 a year. He'd fund that for 40 years until he turned age 65. So total, in this specific example, he would contribute a total of $348,000 he would save in this contract. And this is like math, so I'm trying to go slow.
Yeah.
But then when he starts taking distributions at age 65, and we ran it out to age 90, so taking distributions from age 65 to 90, he was able to take out $51,000 every year, creating his own pension, completely income tax free.
Wow.
So total, he would give the insurance company $348,000. And if he lived to age 90, he would take out $1.2 million of income, never pay a dime of income tax. And if he died at age 90, he'd actually have a $400,000 death benefit still in place from the policy.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
between him and his family, he'd be taking 1.2 million of income for himself, tax free. And again, this is just hypothetical.
Yeah. Yep.
Then if he died at 90, and at 90 he'd still have a $400,000 death benefit. So he gave the insurance company, let's just call it $350,000, and his family received $1.6 million between retirement income and death benefit, completely income tax free. Now, we could probably do some math. You'd have to give me a minute, but we'd have to like work backwards. Can you imagine like what the capital tax free equivalent would be like if that money was in a 401k or an IRA?
Yeah, man.
It'd have to be a hell of a lot more than 1.6 million when you take into consideration like all the taxes and things. You'd probably have to save like 2.5 million or 3. And it's like, look, when it comes down to retirement, here's the question: your retirement income. Do you want it to be predictable or do you want it to be probable? Right? Because the stock market means it's probable.
Right.
An insurance contract is predictable. Like this is what it's going to be.
Absolutely.
Right? So do you want it to be predictable or do you want it to be probable? And who knows what the income tax rates are going to be like in the future. So I love that product for younger people. I also have investments. I have a Roth 401k. We're going to actually talk about that on my next point, but it's just not being risk smart. It's not understanding that you can use a life insurance contract to give yourself like a tax-free pension, using annuities to give yourself a pension. We talked about disability insurance, and then you briefly talked about long-term medical costs. Like retirees not having the long-term care insurance, and that can wipe you out. Whether you need home health care, whether you need to go into a nursing home, things of that nature. And here's the other thing: like young guys like me and you, we're 35, 40 years old. We think it's never going to happen. We talked about the disability. Well, look, you might say like, well, my projections in my 401k, I should be able to get this. But what if you become disabled and you can't work anymore? Like if you're not earning income, you're not saving income, and you have no money going into a 401k. But one of the really cool things that you can do on a life insurance contract is you can put a disability waiver on there, meaning if you become permanently disabled, not only do you not lose your life insurance in case you die, the insurance company actually funds the contract. So you still get that cash value growth. You still get the tax-free retirement benefits and all that. So it's like retirement insurance on top of your policy. And there's no such thing like for a 401k. So these life insurance contracts, they also have, with all the tax advantages and the cash flow advantages, they have like disability protection. There's long-term care riders on there as well. Like if you get to age 60 and you have a stroke or you get dementia or something, it actually allows you to spend your death benefit while you're alive, like pay for your nursing home so your family doesn't have to do that. It's incredible. A lot of the different protections that you can put on here. Yeah.
That was, and that kind of segues into some of the stuff we were talking about off air a little bit, but I know I hear the term like paid up additions, and you said you can put riders on there, stuff like that. Are those kind of the same thing? Or is that you're doing paid up additions to kind of boost the plan, or how does that kind of work? I mean, I know we talked about like the wealth maximization accounts and cash value life insurance, stuff like that. And, but you kind of touched on that a little bit. And, I mean, how does that kind of work, I guess, like the riders and everything?
Yeah, great point. So every insurance company is going to be different, right? For like, let's say like for the Knights of Columbus, like that long-term care coverage, that rider, that's actually included on any policy that's over $100,000 death benefit or more. There's no cost of that.
Yep.
And then the disability protection where, during my working years, if I become disabled, like the Knights of Columbus will just take over my payments and fund the contract for me. That is a slight extra cost.
Okay.
And that's just going to be different depending on the size of the size of the policy and like what age somebody is. Paid up additions rider is something different. So let's talk about that. So that we're going to talk about like going into like the next thing, the wealth maximization account.
Yeah.
So with a traditional life insurance policy, you're purchasing a death benefit, right? So in the early years of that contract, there's very little cash value growth. And the reason being is, in year number one, let's say I'm doing $500 a month, I could give the insurance company $500 one time and then walk outside and get hit by a bus, and the insurance company is on the hook to give $500,000 to my family, right?
Right.
And so, so that's the insurance company is taking an incredible amount of risk, like early on in the contract.
Yep.
So life insurance contracts structured in the traditional way, in some senses work really similar to a mortgage. If you think about it, in a mortgage, like if your mortgage payment is $1,000, that first year, that's like $990 worth of interest and like $10 of principal, right? And I'm exaggerating to make a point, but in the early years, it's mostly interest and very little principal. And as you go on throughout your mortgage, that payment, more and more of it becomes principal and less becomes interest.
Yes. Yeah.
And it works similarly to a life insurance contract. In the early years, let's say you have a $500 contribution or premium that you're making. In the early years, most of that $500 is front loaded to the cost of insurance, and very little of it goes to your cash value buildup. Your cash value doesn't really start building up too much until like the third year.
Okay.
And if you're buying the contract specifically for the retirement benefit and specifically for the life insurance coverage, that's okay. It doesn't really matter. You're actually going to get more death benefit, and the retirement benefit in the end actually ends up being about the same. So if you're doing it specifically for like long-term planning with, tax-free income and cool, I get some life insurance coverage during my working years, that's okay. But for people who like to do the strategy, and a lot of real estate guys like doing it, whether it's the family bank or cash flow insurance or wealth maximization accounts, like all these different authors have like their own
the different words
on it, like they're but it's same concept. What it is like you purchase a policy and you get this death benefit, but then you're able to basically front load it with cash and maximum fund it so you can get more cash, so your cash value can be present like right away, right? And so that way you're basically creating your own line of credit within your life insurance contract. You can have 70 or 80% of your cash values available to borrow against in the early years, right? So it can be an incredible way to do things. Now, so why would I use a life insurance contract to?
Yeah, I was going to say, why would you use that over a bank or something like that?
To store my working capital. So, so the books that you showed me earlier, the Heads I Win, Tails You Lose. If you got that book handy, he goes into it. He does a really good job. Garrett Gunderson with the other book that you showed me, like What Would the Rockefellers Do?
Yep.
I'll give you another really good resource for YouTube. There's this gentleman named Chris Kirkpatrick. He calls himself the safe bet money guy. He used to be a professional poker player until that kind of went, I don't want to say went bust, like just the legislation put a lot of clamp downs on that. I don't know if that was like 2013 or something. Then he went to the financial planning industry. He sold mutual funds and things of that nature, but he just didn't like it. And he kind of transitioned into this insurance role because he does a lot of real estate investing.
Yep.
Again, his name is Chris Kirkpatrick. He calls himself the safe bet money guy.
Cool.
So he has some great videos on why you do that. But at the end of the day, think about, Brandon. So here's the strategy. So let's say for a real estate investor, they're saving up money in the bank and they're not getting a very good rate of interest, right?
Yep.
But that money's completely like it's available to them. They can, hey, we got a good real estate deal. We want to close on it. Like, boom, here's my money, right? So it's like they're giving up any kind of return for the advantage of liquidity. But what happens is, if you have $50,000 there, you're making interest on $50,000. But when you go ahead and make that real estate purchase, now you're down to zero.
Right.
You've just killed your power of compounding. In fact, you've taken that power of compounding and you transferred it to somebody else. And now they get to utilize your power of compounding instead of you being able to have it because you're back at zero.
Yep.
But with a permanent life insurance contract, it doesn't work that way. Let's say, for example, that you have $50,000 of cash value build up and you want to access that. When you access that money, you're not taking money out of your account. What's happening is the insurance company is sending you their money in the form of a collateralized loan. You're using the principle of OPM, other people's money. Your money is still in the account. That $50,000 is there, still gaining interest as if it's the whole $50,000 because it is. What you're doing is you're using this collateralized line of credit over here from the insurance company to make your real estate investment or, purchase stocks or whatever it is that you want to do with that money. And so what you're doing is you're creating what's called loan arbitrage. So if you're earning 4% tax-free in your insurance contract, and if you're paying, let's say 4% to the insurance company to use the money, well, they cancel each other out for that time. You're creating loan arbitrage.
Yeah.
You know what Dave Ramsey would say? He tries to spin it and make it sound like something it's not. He says, well, why do you got to pay to use your own money?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what he says all the time. I couldn't think of it earlier. Thank you.
Right. But, well, answer me this. If you're borrowing against your home equity, you're going to go down to the bank. Are you going to pay them an interest rate? Why are you going to do that? Why do you got to pay an interest rate to use your own money? Because it's not really your own money. That equity in your home, it's tied to the asset that actually the bank owns. It's the same thing with an
exactly.
It's the same thing with an insurance company. Like when you access that money, they're still on the hook for the $500,000 death benefit.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
But here's why an insurance contract loan can be even better than using a home equity line of credit, because there's no credit checks. There's no loan application.
Yep.
There's no income documentation or like you send me your financials. Like if you're a business owner, your tax returns might be really convoluted. There's none of that.
Yeah. Yep.
Then people who use this strategy with me, they say, Ron, I need X amount of dollars. Once in a while, I'll say, do you mind sharing with me why? And if they don't want to, they don't have to. But some people are like, yeah, I'm going to use it to buy a car. Or I'm going to buy his property.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to answer any questions. They say, okay, I'm going to send you a 1-page form, fill it out, get it back to me. You'll have the money within 10 days. So this is where you're becoming your own bank. You're creating your own family bank.
Yep.
The other key thing is, let's go back to the $50,000. So if you take it out of a bank account, it's gone.
Yep.
You borrow against your life insurance contract. Your money's still continuing to compound. You're leveraging other people's money, but you're basically doing it for free because you're creating loan arbitrage.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the winning key. You end up paying yourself back. So instead of losing that $50,000, you end up reclaiming it on your balance sheet at the end of the day. So you don't lose it.
Wow.
So you can do that. Think about that. If you were to make multiple real estate properties for $50,000, that money goes out. It does work for me. It comes back. And that your money's moving. It's the velocity of money. Yep. But you're always recapturing it and keeping it on your balance sheet instead of transferring it away forever. So you can see how advantageous that is, making 4 or 5 real estate purchases over the course of a few years. The money always comes back to you, but the pile's bigger because, again, it's still growing. You're not negating your power of compounding. It's an amazing thing. People use this for purchases. People buy their automobiles that way, things of that nature, because over a long period of time, you end up coming out ahead. So in a way, you're eliminating banks and all the interest that you end up paying to them. You're in many ways eliminating the Internal Revenue Service because you're growing this money tax-free. You access it tax-free, and then in retirement, you take tax-free distributions, and then you leave money to your family tax-free. And this is why wealthy people use this strategy. Absolutely. And that is the difference between the people who use this strategy versus the people who listen to Dave Ramsey.
Yep.
The people who listen to Dave Ramsey, generally speaking, they're attracted to Dave Ramsey because they're in a financial mess. They're just trying to budget and get out of bad debt. And then he gives them this other advice, which, look, if you follow Dave Ramsey, it's better than doing nothing.
Yeah, 100%.
But generally speaking, he's not working with financially savvy people who are using advanced planning concepts, taking advantage of tax rates, taking advantage of cash flow, investing in real estate.
Yes.
Right. If someone likes stock market investing, great. You can still use your cash value life insurance as the foundational tool, because when's the best time to buy into the stock market? When it's high or when it's low?
When it's low. Yeah.
Well, when's that going to be exactly?
Nobody knows.
And isn't that why everybody makes all the mistakes that they do?
Yeah, absolutely.
But just think, what if you were sitting on $100,000 of cash value life insurance in 2009?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could have bought into the stock market at huge, huge discounts, rode the wave up for whatever you wanted to do, 4, 5, 6 years, and sold at a huge profit.
Yeah.
I mean, let me ask you something. Do you really think the wealthy people of this world do dollar cost averaging? Do you really think that they make their purchases through all economic times? No, they wait for the crashes to happen, and they have access to capital.
Absolutely.
But 99% of people during the crashes, they have no access to capital.
Mm-hmm.
All their money's tied up in a 401k that they can't get to, and that 401k just took a 40% loss. It's the people who have access to capital who can come in and take advantage of that. Those are the people who end up winning.
Yep.
And winning bigly, if I can quote our president.
Oh, yeah, that is good.
I'm covering a lot of information. I'm probably going too fast. I don't know if I'm doing a good job explaining I'm super passionate about it, because it's like things that most people don't know, but it's much more advantageous than your conventional wisdom that you hear from your friendly neighborhood financial planner down the street, Edward Jones or whatever.
Absolutely. Well, that's why we've got you on, because this stuff is invaluable, and it's not stuff we're taught in schools, and this segues into what I was going to ask you a minute ago, which you made me think of, which is why why don't more people know this stuff? Like you just said, this is why the wealthy do this. They're not using banks, and they use banks, but they don't use them in the sense that we think of them necessarily. But they're using these policies and insurance to build a foundation for their families and their dynasties. Why don't we know more about that? Is it just because the Chase Bank and they're better at branding and marketing and telling you to come to them? And why don't insurance companies market as well? And why don't they pull people in as much as the banks do?
Follow the money, baby.
Rhetorical, but
well, listen, follow the money. It's all about advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Watch Fox Business News.
Yep.
And how many companies are on there advertising their investment strategies, or we got this fund, or we got this ETF. Things of that nature. And again, they're appealing to greed. And that's what the 99% of people are taught to try to accumulate this big pile of money, but they don't realize that they're going to be decimated by volatility and decimated by taxes. And it's the wealthy people who have all these different advisors that coordinate, they got an attorney for their wills and trusts. They got a CPA to see how the taxes are going to work. They've got investment advisors, they've got insurance people, and they coordinate this plan. So again, I'm not saying that the only thing you should have is cash flow insurance. That's not what I'm saying.
Right. Oh, no.
I have cash flow insurance. I have a Roth 401k. Although I did admit
real estate beforehand. Yeah. I
mean, I sold all my stock in December because I kind of, I was scared of what was going to happen this year with the election coming up.
Yep.
I do have one rental property at this point.
Yep.
So I have a little bit of like all this stuff, but by far the most amount of money that I personally do is I put it into these insurance contracts because I trust myself and my ability more than I trust just turning my money over to Wall Street and hoping the stock market's going to do what it's supposed to do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
100%. And it's
now the other thing, can I go back to something else that you mentioned? I think you might like this. Do I have the ability to share my screen on this end, even though you're the host?
I think you do. I'm pretty sure. You have the little share button down there. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I see it. I'm going to show you something I think might blow your mind. You talked about banks, right?
Yep.
Did you realize that banks are the largest purchasers of cash value life insurance in the country?
Honestly, I don't know for sure, but I want to say the heads I win, they might have said that in there. I can't remember though. That rings a bell kind of.
Banks own billions and billions of dollars of cash value life insurance. I'm going to try to share my screen so I can just show you the balance sheet of the 4 largest banks and how much life insurance they own.
Oh, let's wonk out a little bit. I like it.
Yeah, and this is just public knowledge that you're able to just
Oh yeah, exactly. I haven't looked at
anybody can go out and
the banks in a while.
Yeah, so
I don't even remember last time I looked at them.
Slideshow, current slide. All right, so do you have that pulled up?
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah, I see it.
So this is Citibank, and you can see what's highlighted: general account life insurance assets, separate account life insurance assets. You can see that Citibank has over $5 billion. So this is amount and stuff.
Wow.
So $5 billion of cash values of life insurance.
Jeez.
Right, I'm trying to click over. Here's Wells Fargo. You can see that they have over $18 billion of cash value life insurance.
Wow.
Right here we got Bank of America, $22 billion. And why are these banks? And this is what's called their tier 1 capital. It's capital that has to be extremely safe and extremely liquid.
Yep.
Well, you know what else is safe and pretty liquid? Like, bank accounts and CDs and money markets. If those were so good, why aren't the banks investing all their money in their own money markets? Why are they purchasing so much cash value life insurance? Right?
Oh man, it's a great question. It's a great question.
And we also talked about, this is part of the circle of wealth presentation. In fact, I think I actually put these bank balance sheets in here after you saw this. I'm not sure that I had this.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing these. Yeah. I don't remember seeing these.
Awesome. Another really key point is that over 22% of all cash value life insurance is owned by the top wealthiest 1% in America.
Wow.
So what do these people know? These wealthy people, these wealthy corporations and banks, what do they know that the average guy listening to Dave Ramsey doesn't know?
Yep. Exactly.
So, again, it's a little bit of a paradigm shift, and I'm working really strongly on this because I'm all about, again, I've got real estate, I've got a 401k, Roth option, but I'm all about smashing the conventional wisdom and showing people how these policies could be really beneficial. And at the end of the day, I sit down, I talk with clients and say, all right, how much should we use here, like your volatility buffer? How much should we have invested in the market and things of that nature, and come up with a comprehensive plan based on their goals. But there's so much like the traditional financial planning industry, like the bias. And so I love smashing that bias.
Yeah, I love that.
Because when you look at the truth behind it, you realize that, you know, these products and these strategies are much better than just locking up all your money in a 401k that you don't know what tax rates are going to be, and you don't know what you're actually going to earn on it.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you sharing these. And the seventh point, did we touch on that at all? So I wanted to talk about, before we wrap, I wanted to talk about Warren Buffett really quick. And then also, if someone wanted to do, like, say they wanted to come take money out of their policy and like, I'm going to buy a car, I'm going to buy a house. Is someone just coming to you, or someone's just coming to their agent and they're handling that for them? And how does that work?
Yes. Like, I just have people contact me. They tell me like, hey, I want this much money. All right, I'm going to fill out this form and send it over to you.
Cool. Perfect.
It's really quite easy. So point or mistake number 7, like the seventh deadly sin, we've talked on it a lot, but it's taxes. It's not planning for taxes. And so, again, just the strategy or the thought process is, we're in an extremely low tax rate or tax environment right now. We're trillions of dollars in debt. Like, all of our social programs are underfunded. We're kind of moving more towards socialist thinking. Where's that money going to come from? So, I mean, other than maybe taking an employer match, because employers actually can't match Roth contributions because they won't get like their tax deduction. And that's what people don't get. Like, employers aren't matching your 401k just because they're being nice. Right. It's called like golden handcuffs for a reason. Like, they're trying to entice you to get you to stay at that job with them. And that's why they have, like, when I worked at Quicken, I wasn't there 5 years. So when I left, like, I lost all my 401k match. At the time, I didn't realize the ramifications, but I wasn't going to stay there like another 2.5 years. I wanted to move on and do other things. So that's like the golden handcuff. So that's not necessarily a good reason to invest money in a pre-tax 401k just to take advantage of the match. Because like, if you're someone who's going to advance in your career and you might go to different companies, it's possible you're going to lose that match anyway. So that's why I love, for like, you know, your safe money to do the cash value life insurance because of the tax benefits, and then the money that you want to have invested, like, to do that in a Roth account. The problem though, again, with the Roth IRA, I mean, you can only put $6,000 in per year, and there's income limitations. So if you make too much money, you can't use it at all. I'm lucky I have a Roth 401k, so there is no income limitation, and the contribution limits are way higher. I can put in $19,000 a year into a Roth 401k. But not everybody has that option through their employer. So if they want to do a Roth option, they might just have to go to like a financial advisor, or maybe call up Vanguard or something and say, hey, this is what I want to start. But if you make too much money, you can't do it. I'm all about like people like increasing their means, like their skill sets, like different income streams, and being able to do well for themselves. But
absolutely.
So those are some limitations as well. So what else do you want to cover, man? I'm having fun.
No, I know. Seriously, I know I could do this for hours and hours. It will. I mean, we'll do it again. So maybe go, you know, next time we'll go more advanced. Like I said, I wanted to have you, you know, maybe in a month or whatever, 6 weeks, like when we start seeing more of, like, trying to think early to mid June, where we've seen more data come in. Obviously unemployment's huge, stuff like that. And again, I think the more time goes on, the more this kind of stuff is more and more important, right? So so that'll be, you know, we'll hit more advanced 202 stuff later. If this wasn't advanced enough already, but
I know.
Well, it is. I mean, again, I'm glad you're doing this, because it's like I said, for 10 years I've been studying these things, and like, still insurance is like, I half get it, you know, like you helped me a ton today. Hopefully, I'm sure you help a lot of people, and people that'll be seeing this later in replays or whatever will see it. But you know, you helped explain a lot and connect pieces in my head. I'm still not all the way there, but that's why you continually do it, right? So I appreciate you doing that, because it's just something that, again, the younger crowd, no one's taught about it. It's something that's super important. It's not just some far off, distant thing that you don't have to think about right now. It's something that you can utilize right now and really grow and build, which I think is huge and so important. But in saying that, Warren Buffett, I know we touched on it earlier a little bit, just, you know, his thing is insurance, right? Obviously, like, there's a reason that he was like, wow, this is the best vehicle to go into, and I need to base my wealth, my billions and billions of dollar thing I'm going to create. He knew he was going to create it okay, I want insurance to be able to do that. So just, lightly touching on him, I guess, and why he does what he does, or what he does, basically, I guess, I think is smart. A fun thing to kind of end on.
Yeah. Yeah. He utilizes a concept that in the insurance world is called float. I'm not really well versed on explaining all the intricacies of that. But Warren's made a lot of his money through the insurance industry. And, when we were on the webinar a couple of weeks ago, we mentioned like the 5 tax-free types of income you could get. And they're all forms of collateralized loans, because we have the life insurance and the reverse mortgage and the commercial mortgage, the private mortgage, and then the margin accounts, which Warren, he's a big fan of the margin accounts and things like that. So he understands the taxes behind it. He understands being able to have the control and the liquidity. And, Warren Buffett's a successful investor, not because he turns his money over to a money manager. I've heard that he sits there and reads a stack of documents like this high every day. And then he spends like a huge majority of his day reading and learning like what companies are, good to invest in, what industries are good to invest in, like how are we're going to do this. And maybe I'll just say this, like that a lot has been made about the fact that he is sitting on a huge pile of cash. And even during this last little blip, he still didn't do anything with it. So a lot of people are speculating that he thinks it's going to get even worse. So I pray for the American people that it doesn't.
Right.
But the longer this drags out, we're not going to see the true ramifications of all these shutdowns until much later. And even when we kind of get back to like normal, there's going to be a big group of people who are going to be afraid to get on a plane. They're going to be afraid to go to a baseball game or afraid to go to a concert. And that's going to have a domino effect to all these small businesses. Like if people aren't going to baseball games, like, I don't know,
no concessions people working. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And the small business guy who maybe makes some t-shirts or stuff, maybe he only employs 10 people. Well, all those jobs are gone. Yep. And then this has a domino effect into the market, because those are people not going out spending money. So, I'm praying that everything goes well, but we'll, have to see.
It is interesting. And it's like you said, praying that things, there's miracles that happen, because, 30 million plus unemployment, and, just levels that are really unthinkable. I mean, that's, we just never seen anything like it before. And that's where it's scary. And hopefully miracles do take place, because we're going to need it. Because I fear that we are the road runner running off the cliff, and we just haven't looked down yet. And we're so early on in this phase that it's just like, oh, everything's fine still. Everything, we're kind of in that denial phase almost. And like you said, when we go back to work, we don't even know who's going to go back to work. Like what businesses will actually still be standing. No one knows yet. And that's what's, I think, crazy. And I'm scared. But you got to have faith, obviously, and pray everything's okay. But boy, oh boy, that's what's, I think is scary. So
well, I feel for these little guys, the little small business owners. There's a really nice little diner over here by my office, like the kind where you walk in there and they call you by name. Like the kind where when I'm too busy at my office, I had to call them up and order takeout. Like I'm just going to run over there, and they recognize my voice over the phone.
Yeah.
Like, and I was sitting in there the last day until they forcibly closed. And this thing keeps dragging on to where it's going to be 2 months. I don't know if they'll ever reopen.
Yeah.
Right. And what's that going to mean for like that business owner, all those employees? And they say restaurants are like one of the hardest hit, but that's, I mean, there's so many people in that industry. So that's just like one small representative of like all these people whose lives are going to be upended.
Yes.
I won't necessarily give my views. I'll just say it's government overreach. It's government intervention. They come in and they
power. It's government overreach.
Yeah.
I mean, they all do it. That's the problem, and it's been that way for 100 years. We talked a little bit off, before we came on air, and it was just, 100 years of the Federal Reserve, and it's just the plans in place. It's like, you almost can't fight it in a way, because it's been put in place, and now we're just living out what was done years and decades ago. And it's sad. But again, people getting, information and empowering themselves, doing this and watching stuff like this, and watching other people, the Chris Kirkpatricks of the world and stuff like that, finding out what's actually going on is going to then, hopefully, really will then turn that tide eventually, so people can, and getting back to, I heard a crazy thing the other day. It was to get a history major in this country, there's like certain schools or colleges that you don't even have to take one history class in order to get a major in U.S. history. I mean, those people are teaching our kids about U.S. history, and they don't know anything. It's mind blowing. And if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And
that's crazy. Actually, that was my major when I went to college. My degree
really?
in secondary education, I majored in history.
Yeah.
I took many, many history classes. I even had a teacher who was very conservative, which is crazy to think about on a college campus.
Yeah.
I remember back then, this was like maybe 2001, he used this phrase and he said, this is going to get worse and worse, but it's the tyranny of the minority. It's like that one person who's offended, we're all going to make all these laws and rules to like try to accommodate this one person. And back then I was like 20, 21 years old. I had no idea what he was talking about, but now I can think back to that.
Right.
Holy cow.
And think about, and that's 20 years ago, like think about that. I mean, we knew it was coming. We knew this stuff was going to happen if you actually followed the path and read history, and you could see it coming. And that's what's frustrating, I think, to a lot of people who do pay attention and read history and look into it and, inform themselves. So again,
that's why guys like you and I are so valuable, right? Because we help people plan for uncertainty and help teach them the truth of what's going on, man. Exactly. I've really enjoyed this conversation. This has been awesome. We got to do it again.
It's been awesome, dude. And like I said, we'll do it again in a month or whatever, in 6 weeks. And, when kind of go into maybe some of this other stuff and go into the stuff we just touched on here at the end, history and just kind of where we are, what do you do about it, stuff like that. Because that's really why I started doing this, just because it's time to, just do something different and help educate other people. And it's just something that I've been doing. We've talked about this. You've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for a long time, just educating ourselves. And you want to be able to share that with other people, because unfortunately it's just not a common thought anymore. And it's important to do it. So appreciate you, man. Any last guiding light, any advice, anything, any last points you want to touch on at all?
Yeah, just, my advice to anybody who's out there who needs to work on their financial planning, retirement planning, don't procrastinate and don't delay. Like the winners of this world don't delay, right? It's like, if you get started right now, it's going to cost you less and you're going to get a lot more in the long run with less risk and more predictability. But the longer you wait, the longer you put it off, it's going to cost you more and you're going to get less in the long run. So don't put this stuff off. Like talk to Brandon, talk to me, if you got an advisor, talk with them, get an update on what's happening right now, and, tweak your plans if you need to, or implement a new piece that you haven't done yet. Like quit putting it off and do it. Yep. Right. Successful people in the world don't wait around. They take action, positive action.
Yeah, exactly. That's great parting words. Where can people find you if they have questions, comments, concerns, anything like that? How can they get in touch with you?
They can go to www.snelleragency.com, or they could always just, also give me a call. I'll even put my number out there. I'll put my office number just so we're not getting calls at home, 248-241-6826. We'll do that instead of my cell phone. So
cool.
Yeah.
And then I will, I'll tag you on the Facebook Live also, also, and then you can put your info on there as well. So
awesome.
Appreciate it, man. Ron Sneller, God-fearing man, very intelligent man, and loving husband and father. So appreciate you a ton. And I just look forward to doing this more in the future. And like I said, just, hey, at the very least, we get on and get to make each other feel good. So at the very
least. No doubt. Maybe one of these days we'll actually be able to get together person to person and face to face and have a cup of coffee or something. But who knows when that'll be?
I know, right? Someday soon, hopefully.
Yeah. See ya, Brandon.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.